Welcome to the Building Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Don Tarjanskis, and join us as we explore the world of construction. Each episode, we welcome a guest that shares career highlights and career advice, and hopefully inspires the next generation of construction professionals.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Building Your Career podcast. I'm joined by Howard, who is the Director of Natural Capital at Tetra Tech. Howard's someone that I've worked with in the past before. I'm very excited to have him on the pod. So I think we'll start off where we usually start off in terms of if you could tell us a little bit about your background and experience and what kind of got you into the sustainability, environmental and planning sector.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's well, I grew up in a small village called Fairlight, which is on the south coast, and yeah, it was very much surrounded by nature, next to the sea, and all of that. And yeah, from a really early age, I discovered that I was passionate about the land and the sea, and being close to it, and it made me feel a particular sense of warmth and belonging and all of that sort of stuff. But it was at the top of a cliff, and the cliff was quite crumbly, and houses started disappearing down the cliff. So I took particular interest. I think it was about 10 when they started developing these huge coastal defences, dropping all these giant granite rocks on the beach, just to basically save the village from falling into the sea. So I think at that sort of stage, I realised that being involved in this kind of world is where my destiny lay.
That's a really nice story, and I think it's always good to have, particularly with people stepping in the industry, is to have a little bit of a passion for it, or kind of a little bit of a backstory really in terms of why you want to get into it. And as long as you've got that passion behind you, then everything else can kind of be taught along the way really. So yeah, that's a really nice story, Howard. So moving on to the next question, could you kind of tell us a little bit more about your kind of current position, and a little bit more about Tetra Tech and what the vision is for the business for the future?
Yeah, definitely. I'll probably start off with who Tetra Tech are. They're a pretty giant multidisciplinary consultancy based originally from the States. I think there's about 22,000 staff or so, although they've recently acquired some other companies, so it's probably a bit more than that. In the UK, we offer a huge suite of services, from whether it's town planning, transport planning, engineering, all the types of engineering, so your structural, your civil, your mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering. In the environmental sector, you've got things like air quality and noise, and a huge number of ecologists, water quality, flood risk modelers, geotechnical, geoenvironmental engineers, contamination, that sort of thing, and sustainability consultants. Now, the concept of what is sustainability is probably a topic for another day, but I'll be delighted to kind of ramble on for probably a good hour on what my views of sustainability. So my background is mainly in environmental impact assessment, but as I'll come on to later, yeah, I've kind of retrained myself a number of times to pick up things like climate change, resilience, carbon assessments, human health assessments as well. And I think because I'm passionate about biology and biological processes, it was quite a natural fit for me to get into an area called natural capital. Now, natural capital is essentially it's nature. Now, nature is the interplay of biodiversity, of wider ecosystem services such as like air purification from vegetation, carbon dioxide sequestration, oxygen production, water purification, things like bioremediation, or even just like the value that you would have, that you'd feel when you look at a tree or a landscape. That these things aren't properly valued very well at the moment, but they provide so much in the way of services and value, that it's been a bit of a mind shift over, say, the last 10 years, into how we actually properly, or more accurately, value nature, and realize the capital that is there, whether that's from just the actual stock of services or the processes that nature provides. It's all valuable stuff, and bit by bit, people are starting to realize it. And you've got a bunch of stuff like green finance, or sustainable investments and things like that, because there's aspects like the big global players are starting to realize that what with the dual issues of climate change and biodiversity collapse, proven time and time over through data, that actually puts their own assets, when I say assets, I mean buildings, food, staff, all of that. It puts everyone at quite a lot of risk, and so the market is starting to realize these risks and put in place measures to sort of investigate and probably try and reallocate certain investments from more damaging activities into activities that are going to reduce the risks on humanity as a whole, but in particular their own investments and assets. So,
okay, brilliant. And I think that's really important as well, because the underlying theme of this whole podcast is kind of inspiring a younger generation and giving them a few options about what they can get involved in, or indeed people who want to get involved in perhaps the sustainability and environmental side. But as you touched on there, it is a case of it's not just something that's in vogue at the moment, or a talking point around the dinner table. This is something that companies are actually adopting and are taking seriously as well. So I think, I suppose, my generation's slightly different, where it wasn't seen as such a big thing, but now with the younger generation, it is a big thing. And you yourself are proof that there is work to be had in that particular sector, and to actually do something about it and have a job that is having a positive impact on the issues that we're all facing. So I think from that point then, if you could kind of talk to us about your early career and how you first got into the industry, that would be great. And then maybe following that up with our $1 million question, if you could turn back the hands of time and give yourself one piece of advice when you first started out, what would that be?
Okay. So my career path hasn't always been clear. It's been a lot of potentially dark times, and you can't always see what's ahead of you, and you're trying to balance your inner belief that you want to try and make a meaningful contribution with the conflicting issues that actually climate change is happening, and why do people actually take notice of this, and how come we're still destroying the Amazon rainforest and things like that. So no, I mean, I think I started off pretty early by doing some voluntary work, and that's definitely a bit of advice that I'd give to anybody, because it's always hard to get anything on your CV. Voluntary work of any type is really valuable at showing that you're passionate, you're willing to put yourself out there, you're willing to kind of get, even for free, just to gain that experience and get yourself like a small toe on the ladder. So I did a little bit of voluntary work at an RSPCA wildlife rehabilitation centre that was nearby in my village. But then, I've worked in I've an eclectic mix of jobs. I've worked in supermarkets. I was there on the very first day that National Lottery opened as the lottery till supervisor. I worked in a hospital as a cleaner. I've worked in call centres for power gen, phoning up people for meter readings and things like that. My first graduate job was in Leicester in a pizza-based making factory on the end of a kind of conveyor belt. So yeah, I've been there and done that, and I think actually, it's character building. I think people always say, but it definitely allows me to contextualize kind of, looking back how far I've come, and I'm very happy with that. And again, so I just about scraped into uni, and I did a biology degree, and you're kind of young and a bit wild. I got a 2-2 for that, which didn't set the world alight in terms of people banging down my door to kind of get me to work for them.
Are you a job seeker, tired of endlessly scrolling through job boards with no success? Has your job search hit a dead end? Well, we're here to tell you there's another way. Here at Quest Personnel, we offer a variety of free resources to help job seekers just like you. Our team of expert recruiters is here to help you through every step of the job search process, from CV writing to interview techniques. But that's not all. We also offer exclusive access to workshops, networking events, and other job roles that you simply won't find anywhere else. So what are you waiting for? Get in touch now on our website, questpersonnel.co.uk.
So yeah, you were talking about the degree route and getting the 2-2 and not knocking down too many doors. So so what kind of happened after that then?
Well, after that, I was living with my ex-girlfriend at the time up in Nottingham, and I was exploring different career routes to me, and again, I didn't really have a clue, but one thing that kind of kept coming up was consultancy, and how do we get in consultancy? I wasn't necessarily getting a lot of joy in terms of being able to get into consultancy with just a biology degree, because it wasn't as relevant perhaps to like environmental sustainability elements. So again, I was very lucky to have supportive family and kind of being able to afford to go and do a master's. So I did go and do an MSc at Oxford Brookes in something quite targeted. It was an MSc in Environmental Assessment and Management, and it had some quite practical and tailored and targeted kind of outcomes in that course, focusing on all sorts of applications like geographical information systems or environmental impact assessment and air quality modelling and things like that. So yeah, I went and did that, and pretty much straight away after that I was snapped up by a company called RSK, but even then I had to compromise a little bit, because at that stage the asbestos regulations had just kind of come into force, and that was a big growth area. So I basically had to agree to do asbestos consultancy for about 1.5 years, which was actually, looking back, one of the funnest jobs I've ever had. Armed with a kind of a sledgehammer and a pickaxe, and going and walking around old disused warehouses and power stations and that sort of thing, bashing holes in floors and trying to find asbestos. Anyway, yes, so that got me into, and then I was able to transfer into environmental impact assessment. So I did that for another couple of years at RSK, and then I'd always told myself that, life ends at 30. So I'd had this plan to go travelling, and it was always an ambition of mine to go to Latin America. So I did. I felt after 3.5 years of consultancy experience plus the 2 degrees, I was in a relatively secure place. But you only get one chance at life, and actually, if you don't do it before you're 30, you're never going to do it, etc. etc. So I did. So I quit my job and went off travelling for quite a period of time, and much the disdain of certain members of my family who wanted me to be more sensible, but hey, I don't regret any of it. I still think about it, daydream about the Amazon rainforest and playing with a howler monkey and things like that almost every day. So then I got back to reality and got into another environmental impact assessment role, this time at a company called URS, which then became ACOM, and I was there in a fairly sizable EIA specialist team, and it taught me a lot of stuff about commercial realities of how you write bids, how actually things operate as a business, and how to deal with clients, how to be a project manager, how to be just generally a good rounded professional. After 8.5 years there, I'd basically been in a position where sort of thrown in at the deep end on a couple of things. Sometimes in your career you'll have a kind of a make or break moment or project, and for me it was one called the Northern Line Extension, which is a Transport for London project, and it was about 10 months of my life, and it kind of fell on my lap fortuitously, and to basically manage all of the environmental impact assessment studies. So for anyone that isn't so familiar, that is coordinating anything from archaeology, heritage, contamination, ecology, landscape or townscape, transport, socioeconomics, health, climate change, water quality, flood risk, probably a few others that I've missed. So I'm basically working as a coordinator to get each of those areas, each have their own particular specialist areas that any listeners could choose to go down and focus on themselves. But I was doing all of that. I looked at all of the sustainability elements. So for infrastructure, they use a thing called SQL. For buildings, they generally use things like BREEAM or that sort of thing. So I was doing a lot of that, and that was tough, very tough. Going along to the lawyers' offices, going along to the engineers' offices, working really closely with Transport for London, working really closely with a bunch of other kind of specialists. And I did end up working till about 10 o'clock 4 nights a week for about 6 months, which again, if I'd have dropped the ball at that stage, then I probably wouldn't have been where I am now, because what it does do is it gives you that inner sense of belief that you can actually do this. So, but after 8 years it was time to move on. And so since then I've a company called RPS, a company called BWB, the latest company was a company called Temple, which is a kind of specialist SME, and now I've kind of ended up at Tetra Tech.
That's brilliant, and I think that highlights the importance of, particularly when kind of first starting out in your career, is to be a little bit of a sponge and absorb the knowledge of lots of different people around you. But as you started off, you had a varied career doing lots of different things, and with the asbestos, just jumping straight into that and getting involved in that. And I think that is very important, that you are kind of open to saying yes to things at the beginning, getting new experiences, getting new ways of working, getting new ways of doing things, and not being too kind of shut off and saying that isn't what I should be doing, or that's not the sector that I work in. Because a lot of the people that I speak to at very, very senior level and who've been on this podcast as well have naturally kind of fallen into a specialism that they found out they enjoyed. And if that wasn't for saying yes to something that was 5, 10, 15 years ago, then that direction would never have happened. So I think that's quite crucial, for people coming into the industry to have that mindset, really.
I mean, I would say that, it's funny actually, because at the time, or shortly after doing the biological science degree, I probably regretted it, and what's the point of that?
Mm-hmm.
But it's only now that I'm doing a job that kind of calls upon a little bit more of an in-depth knowledge of biological processes, like to underpin the ecosystem service concept, that actually I'm sort of having that grounding is actually enabling me to do this. But it was not very much purpose for about 10, 15 years, but actually now that's come back to actually being worthwhile.
And I think that kind of leads really nicely onto our next section as well. So I just wanted to get from your perspective, if obviously you came down the degree education route, which was exactly the same for myself to get into construction as well, doing architecture, but for people who maybe didn't want to go down that degree route for whatever reason, what would you say would be kind of other alternatives to get into the industry that perhaps is not going down the degree educated route?
So there's some very high profile professionals out there that have got to a mind-blowing level without having gone to university, and I'm certainly one to sort of say you don't need to have a degree to be any good at this, and actually sometimes degrees can kind of almost give you a full sense of security or purpose or something like that. But I think it's interesting, as part of the Social Value Act that maybe a little bit left field, but there's a bit of legislation about social value, and that government contracts, for example, require you to derive social value. And again, what social value is probably a subject for a different podcast. But essentially, consultancies such as Tetra Tech, in order to show that they're generating social value, for any kind of big government contract they may win, they will offer a number of they'll offer a bunch of training, or they'll offer bit of outreach to sort of nearby schools, or they'll have a preference for local people, disadvantaged people, to actually obtain training, or I can't remember the word, the apprenticeship route, for instance. We do have a number of apprenticeships going as well that are they're quite not that common, but they do exist, and I know that across the industry apprenticeships are still there, and that model is a pretty good one actually, when you start thinking about the cost and benefit of going two different routes, and by the age of 21 how much debt would you be saddled with on one route, and how much years of experience and profit will you be saddled with on the other route.
Perfect. And then just finally as well, in terms of maybe some advice to other senior people, is there anything that you would recommend in order to nurture young talent in the business, or any particular maybe management traits that you have to ensure that people are being valued and really want to pursue their career right from the beginning?
so there's two sets of advice, I guess. One is to anyone just starting off or just trying to get into to a career, which is definitely that a career is a very, very, very long time, and the old adage is marathon, not a sprint. But no, I can't emphasize that enough. It feels like I've been doing this forever, and I've got 20 odd years worth of really good experience, but I've still got another 20 left to go in my career, and it's mind blowing that what am I going to do for the next 20? And in a way, that's why I'm trying to almost like refocus from time to time, and because it's such a long time, it means that you can get out what you put in. It might not have immediate kind of feedback, but I went through a phase of going to as many networking events as I possibly could. I mean, I was lucky to have a career in London, so there's always something going on. But you get confident that talking to people, you build up your network, and again, it might not lead to anything immediately, but over the course of a number of years, your network grows and grows and grows, and friends start to appear, and the same names kind of seem to come back, and things like that. But in terms of advice to other or senior people or companies, and how maybe kind of attract and retain that talent. Firstly is to maybe try and take down that barrier to entry in terms of you must have 2 degrees, because it's a nightmare, because actually it doesn't reflect the wider workforce, and it's not necessarily a meritocracy in that respect. But also, I really enjoy talking to kind of grads, consultant level colleagues, and spending the time to give them my time, give them a little bit of my context, my understanding, but also just to listen back to them as to what they got into it, because in 15 years time, or probably 10 years time, when they're towards the zenith of their careers, and I'm kind of on the way down, and I'm not able to kind of keep up with the relative technology changes and stuff like that, then people do have long memories. I mean, I'll always remember the people that were nice to me at the beginning of my career and that helped me, but I'll equally always remember the people that weren't so nice to me. And so you've got to kind of have that always at the back of your mind, that we're here to work. It's so much better if we can actually talk to each other in a very civilized way, and actually nurture and respect, and try and, especially in the sustainability field, we're all trying to pull in the same direction at the end of the day.
Well, Howard, thank you so much for your time. It's been really nice speaking to you, actually, and hearing about your background and experience, and your passion that has remained with you all the way, and how your career has kind of naturally progressed, and learning lots of different things and being open to lots of different experiences along the way. And I'm 37 now, so the old adage, life begins at 30. I did think that was exactly the same. So I did exactly the same as you. So who knows? I might go travelling soon. It's been an absolute pleasure, Howard. Thank you very much for your time, and it's been a great episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on the Building Your Career podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and learning about the different career paths available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so we can reach even more listeners. And if anyone wants any free CV advice or simply wants to know the options available to them, don't hesitate to get in touch.